What is that? Test 1?
Yeah.
All right, before we begin, for all of you that are coming over from Rude Awakening, we've renamed everything Dark Enigma because people can't find us on YouTube without having to watch a whole bunch of Cheech and Chong movies. And we are starting a new YouTube channel at Dark Enigma YT. So remember that. So this is going to be our introduction to the new video series. But before we begin, we have to quote John Nash, of course, which is, I have respect for beer. Have one with you at all times, or take a toke, whatever. One for Tommy, one for my son Josh, and we're going to add a new one, is do a fucking shot, okay? Because, you know, considering the topic, we need a lot of this. Okay, where's that put us? We got to
add me on there.
Add you on there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Tommy? Seriously. Can you count that high?
Maybe 7.
7. Holy fuck. Did I say fuck on YouTube? I'm sorry. We're gonna stop that. And this is Josh, my son. Josh can also be found at Professor Josh on
something
or another. And why? Here's why. I have 100. Jesus Christ. Did I say that? I'm sorry. I meant Jesus titty fucking Christ. Okay. I have an IQ of 155. Josh, my son, has an IQ of 157. So, fuck you. And that's why he's called Professor Josh. All right. Where you at on shots, Josh? 2?
Just 2.
2 beers? 1, 2, 3. Tommy?
5.
5.
Yeah.
That's a big Roman numeral V. Josh? 2?
Just 2.
Just 2. Okay.
Damn it.
We're working our way on it.
Making me look like an alcoholic.
No, I'm not. You're making you look like an alcoholic. I'm just doing the math. All right. So, if you haven't had a shot or a beer, I just gave you plenty of time to do it. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an introduction. We're going to start the new YouTube channel and get going with it. Things are looking up. We started this 2 years ago, and we have found so much evidence that it's just absolutely mind-boggling. If you haven't had a chance, look up Rude Awakening episodes 7 and 8, and you'll realize where we're going with this at this point. But we want to talk about the introduction, and that is regards the theory itself. Okay, so the theory has evolved over the past 2 years. When we first started this out, it was bits and pieces and putting it together, and seemed to fit in with all the mythology and the anthropology and the geology and the physics. All led to the same place. But it has evolved to the point where we have a very much clearer vision of what's going on. And here's the funny thing, and that is that all of you, and I don't care who you are, all of you have been feeling it. All of you have been reading it. All of you have been seeing it for decades and decades, depending on how old you are. It's all leading to the same thing. And the only reason we know this is because we at this point are talking to hundreds and hundreds of people. They're all telling us the same thing, that this theory is correct. This is what they've been feeling their entire life. This is what they've been seeing, but they haven't been able to put the picture together. So that's what we've been doing. We've been taking geology, anthropology, physics, mythology, religion, and we've been sticking them all together because they're all pointing to the same thing. And here's what it boils down to. Now, there are a number of people that are talking about similar theories, but we think we're dead on with some of the differences that we have with them. And we hope to be able to talk to them at some point and compare notes and so forth, because it's all pointing to the same thing. Alrighty, so the theory is simply this. Here is the universe, the center of the universe. Here is our sun, which is many on down the line from the center of the universe. Here is the Earth. The center of the universe creates what's called a sine wave. A sine wave is simply one that you would see like on an oscilloscope, and basically what it is, it's a pattern. That sine wave has opposite polarities, and every time that sine wave gets to the edge of a wave, it creates a polarity reversal. So here's the center of the universe. That sine wave is extending from the center of the universe. And as we go from one end to the other, where there's a change in polarity, that polarity, make that a negative sign, that polarity creates a shift in the rotation of the Earth. We've been living this, and you'll see we've been feeling this for a long, long time. And you'll find that all the mythologies and the religions are talking about this. When you're talking biblical sense, or whether you're talking in mythologies of the Nordics and the Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Mayans, and so forth, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about the change in polarity. And what that does is it takes the rotation of the Earth, which goes around from west to east, and it shifts it. Right now, we know that the North Pole and the South Pole, this is what we've been taught in school, are right here, and we have a magnetosphere that is created on both sides according to that magnetic shift. What we are seeing is that these poles are shifting. We've been in it for a long time. These shifts in the poles have been going on since 1856. And when it gets to a point to where the stresses on the geophysical properties of the Earth get to such a point, it's going to shift about 90 degrees. Now, we have found evidence of that in mythology, religion, geology, which is explained in Rude Awakening, episodes 7 and 8. And that's going to create dramatic and catastrophic events on the Earth. And those dramatic, catastrophic events on the Earth is what religion and mythology, same thing, have been talking about for thousands of years. Now, the sine wave that occurs from the center of the universe, the time period between one and the other is roughly about 12,000 years. Took me years to figure out the time period, but it's roughly 12,000 years. And so if you have had any kind of reading in anthropology or mythology, and it's evidenced by geology, thank you, 2 shots, 3 beers. Okay, mythology and religion, talking about the same thing, you will find that there is a 12,000 year cycle. Okay, some of them, like the Mayans, for instance, raise that up to about 25,000 years. Okay, but half of 25 is 12.5, right? Okay, so it's still within that 12,000 year cycle. Some are saying that there's a 12,068 year cycle. But the point is, everything's pointing to a 12,000 year cycle. As an example, if we erase this with my hand, Tommy loves it when I do this. As we erase it with my hands, that 12,000 year cycle is seen everywhere. You will read, and all of a sudden you'll see this 12,000 year cycle. When we first discovered this 12,000 year cycle, all of a sudden, all the books that I've read since the 1970s points to this 12,000 year cycle. It's going to be somewhere in this range. Okay? So, the point is, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the catastrophe cycle. What's going to happen? Okay, well, first of all, let's talk about a couple things. One is, I said, you've all been feeling it, right? Here's what you've been feeling. Something is wrong with the world. That's what you've been feeling. This is universal. This is everywhere. Something is wrong in the world, but you can't quite put your finger on it. Okay? The reason is because as we get closer and closer to the edge, actually we're in the edge of the sine wave from the center of the universe, this polarity shift that we're feeling is creating dramatic effects on our ability to think. The other thing that creates dramatic effects on our ability to think is the amount of shots and beers that Tommy, Josh, and I have.
There we go.
Alrighty. So the point is as we go through this cycle, we're going to find that things are going to get worse and worse because our mental capacity is changing as we go through this. When did this start? December 21st, 2012.
Here's to
Bow-legged, swimming with bow-legged women.
holy shit. Yes. Take
Fuck you.
to
Take fuck you. Alrighty, so crazy transition because we lost the video at a certain point. Hopefully I'm right where we're supposed to be. On the other hand, who gives a shit? So, okay, we need to update shots. I'm at 4 and 1, 2, 3 beers. Tommy's at 3. Josh is at 3 more. And 2 shots for Tommy, 2 shots for Josh. Okay, this is how it works, folks. I hate to, lay it on you like that, but, what the fuck. Alright, so we were talking about the Mayan calendar cycling at December 21st, 2012. And yeah, there was a big heyday about that. And everyone thought the world was going to come to an end. It's not. All it is we're at the peak of the cycle, the wave from the center of the universe. And so from this point to this point, the next time, well, actually, this point is 12,000 years, and this point is about 25,000 years. Okay, so that's the full cycle. Okay, so, but we have been feeling the effects of going into this cycle since 1859, specifically September 1st, 1859, which was the Carrington event. And Carrington was an astronomer who just happened to be looking at the sun on that particular date. When that happened, he saw 2 gigantic bright lights coming off of the sun while he was researching some major sunspots that were going on. And a couple hours after that, about 17 hours after that, was what is called the Carrington event. So here's what happened during the Carrington event is that the technology we had at the time was telegraph operation, telephone poles, and people were doing dots and dashes and so forth to communicate with one another. But what they found was that a sudden surge of electrical energy was going through the lines a few hours after the sunspots, or the solar flares took place. And it was so intense that it caught papers on the telegraph operators' desks on fire, shocked the telegraph operators, and this continued on for hours. In fact, even though they shut off all the electricity going to it, all the transformers going to it, the amount of energy that was in the air still allowed them to be able to telegraph for about 6 hours. So what that proved was that the solar flares were acting on the ionosphere to such an extent that it charged the atmosphere of the Earth. Well, the other thing that people don't understand is that since the Carrington event, remember, we have the Earth, we have the South Pole and the North Pole, and we know that the North Pole is moving this way towards Siberia, and we know that the South Pole is moving this way towards Peru. This is where they expect them to fall. The dramatic shift in the direction and the intensity of the movement of these poles, magnetic poles, began in 1859. What that means is that something happened on the sun, and it started a chain reaction of events that caused the magnetic poles to shift not only dramatically in direction, but also logarithmically. And year by year, this has continued to increase to the point to where the speed in which the magnetic poles are shifting is increasing dramatically. So much so to the point that now they're having to change the amount of readings that they're doing on where the magnetic poles are logarithmically. They used to do it every 5 years. Well, they had to do it after 2 years because it shifted so much. Where the magnetic poles are vital to the operations of the military, aeronautics, airplanes, satellites, and so forth. In order for them to be accurate, they have to know where magnetic north is at all times. All the big numbers that you see at the end of runways at airports, as an example, what they're reading is degrees of magnetic north in this particular area. But they've been having to change them because it's moving so fast that when the airplanes try to land on the runways, they have to know what degree of magnetic north it is in order to do that. And I have a friend who is a commercial pilot and internationally, and he says, well, they've been changing that for years. I said, yeah, but they're changing them faster now, and that's because logarithmically magnetic north and south is moving quicker and quicker each year. In fact, magnetic south is moving faster than magnetic north. Okay, so where does that bring us in the catastrophe cycle? Well, something else that we have to keep in mind, and that is, here's the Earth, North Pole, South Pole. We have the magnetosphere around the Earth. Well, the magnetosphere is continuing to decrease at a logarithmic rate. Has been for a long time now. And so we're down about, I believe it's 25 nanoteslas at this point. Just to give you an example of what a nanotesla is, a strong refrigerator magnet is about 1,000 nanoteslas. Okay? That being the case, being down 25 is quite a bit. That's down about 20% of the strength of the magnetosphere. Well, the magnetosphere is important because, continuing to draw, we have the sun here, right? We have the sun here, and the solar flares that come off are continually hitting the Earth, and as it does so, it takes this magnetosphere and it squashes it. The pressure of those solar flares squashes it down. The weaker this is, the more affected we are by those solar flares. Okay, so what is causing all that? Well, it has everything to do with the circle of the universe, the sine waves that are coming off it consistently, the polarity of those sine waves as it changes, and as it does so, it is affecting the magnetosphere. The other thing that we have to worry about is it's what we call our brain. Okay? Because our brain is severely affected. Thank you. Should I do this?
I think it's weird. It's
Okay.
crazy when you just do it.
Our brain is severely affected by the weakening of the magnetosphere as well. So, since 1859, after the Carrington event, the weakening of the magnetosphere and the change of the polar cycle is affecting the way that our brains are working. And scientists have proven, and I will show you at some point studies from NASA and Ames Research, that they did all these studies because they were sending astronauts up past the effect of the magnetosphere above the Earth. And what they were finding was that they were having mental incapacitation as they were getting further and further away from the magnetosphere. So as the magnetosphere is weakening, it's affecting us. How does it affect us? It affects us in a detrimental way. It leads us to more incoherent thinking. It leads us more towards anger and violence. Some studies show that laboratory rats are become more and more violent, and the changes in their thinking is dramatic in a lower magnetic field. And again, I will show you that, which I believe I have here. Nope, I got it in my truck. That study showed that they needed to protect the astronauts from that because they were losing the ability to think when they were above the ionosphere of the Earth.
Amnesia.
Amnesia?
Yeah.
Yeah, not to mention the Mayan mythology that say when the magnetosphere got low enough, coming over here,
Sorry, I bumped you.
white ass, that the Mayans say that when the magnetosphere got low enough during the last catastrophe that happened 12,000 years ago, that they got total amnesia. And this is why the technology that they had before was completely lost.
Not too mad. 412. Here we go. And this time.
Fuck you again.
Yep.
All right, so Tommy's at another shot.
Damn it.
Jesus.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
What?
Did that offend you?
I didn't say anything.
Well, good, because I don't really fucking care. So, okay. So anyway, one more beer for each one of us. Okay, so we're really getting into it here. Okay, so the Mayans said that the last time that this catastrophe cycle started, just all of a sudden, everyone got amnesia. They lost their technology. They lost the ability to do the things that we can't understand what they did before, and they've been trying for 12,000 years to get that back. So that is the catastrophe cycle. I do apologize that Magic Tommy made the board disappear, but we're back. So that being the case, we need to keep in mind that what is coming in the very near future is something that is going to change the world as you know it. Not only is it going to change the world in the way that technology as we know it is going to disappear, but the ability for people to cope with what's coming on is going to be drastic. The effects, both solar and geological, are going to be tremendous in the fact that the world as you know it is going to end in about 24 hours. Not 24 hours from now, but in that particular case. Let me give you an example. It was a long time ago, back in 2008, that I first learned that the solar flares that are going on in the world today had dramatic effects on earthquakes that were going on in the earth. In particular, 2004 in Indonesia is when I discovered it. I realized that every time we had a solar flare, we had a major earthquake. And again, Josh, 2008, wasn't it? Yeah, 2008 is when I started talking about this. And they're learning more and more in the science about that. Well, that being the case, when we're talking about the catastrophe cycle, as the sun comes through this sine wave from the center of the galaxy, it's going to have a dramatic effect on the sun and on the earth as well. And that being the case, with the magnetosphere continuing to drop, it's going to be affected more and more by the sun, which is going to be popping off like crazy at that particular time. And we are going to be unprotected from that. That's going to have numerous consequences, both geologically with regards earthquakes and lightning storms, which you can't even imagine. You only have to go back to the ancient history of the Egyptians and read what Solon and Plato wrote about the massive lightning storms that they had. That's because this magnetosphere is so weak that every time the solar flare comes through and smashes down the sun side of the magnetosphere, it actually arcs with the earth. Okay? Not to mention the effects that it's going to have on people that are living at that time because of the brain's effect on a low magnetosphere as well. So, what is coming out is dramatic. It is unlike anything you have ever seen or has ever been written down in history, except for a few cases. The mythologies, the religions, the geology, the archaeology, the sciences that we see are all pointing to the same thing, that this event happens. And so, now, knowing what the theory is, what the event is that we're talking about, we encourage you to go back to Rude Awakening, in particular, episodes 1 through 8. We're changing it over to Dark Enigma, with Dark Enigma YT on YouTube. And see what we've been talking about for the past couple years. Because this event is going to change the world as we know it in a very short time.